Everybody, Jesse Lakes, co-founder, CEO of Genius Link here. Last week, I had the awesome experience of joining the Virtual Digital Expo as one of their speakers, and I had this great experience to tell the story about experimenting with affiliate links. So, had the speaker spot. It went really well. I was really happy with it. So, I want to just take a moment today and rerun through that presentation, go through my slides, and share that with everyone else that couldn't make it to this Virtual Digital Expo. So with that, how to set up link testing to 2x your conversions in EPC. So a little bit of a clickbaity title here, but the whole goal is to make sure that you understand how to get the most out of your affiliate links. And trusting your gut is super important with affiliate marketing, especially in the early days. And that's where the anything is better than nothing mentality or the perfect shouldn't get in the way of done mentality really kind of fit in. However, you find as you start to progress levels and really kind of expand upon your knowledge and expertise around affiliate marketing, they get to a certain point where your gut and your head may actually start to disagree. And you may actually find that it's time at this point to start running some experiments and really kind of seeing which is right, option A or option B, what you're doing or what you could be doing. What is the better way to earn money? And sometimes that's as simple as, what's a better affiliate program for me? Is Amazon Associates better, even with the commission cuts they had in April? Or is maybe a time to explore Walmart? Further, you could maybe look at one of your top affiliate programs and say, are these links that I'm getting, is this the best way? Or if I do some geo-targeting with these links, would that actually help me improve my earnings as well? Or maybe it's a question like, right now I'm using Amazon links directly, but what if I adopted this whole multi-retailer strategy that I see on so many other major publishers' websites? Would that be better for me as well? Is it worth the time and effort? And these are all great questions, and there's something you can test. And traditionally, testing has really been kind of geared towards running experiments on your website. And there's a number of different JavaScript-based solutions that kind of help you do A/B multivariate testing on your site. But today, we really want to focus on that destination, where those links are going to, where your affiliate links are going. For you affiliate marketers out there, this is obviously one of the ways that you can, or one of the core ways in which you're making money. So while you can run those experiments on your website with that JavaScript-based testing framework, at the same time, we also encourage you to use a link management tool to also test those destinations to make sure that you can really understand how best to monetize that traffic that you did incite to actually click on your link and they want to move forward with the buying options. So in particular with the link management tool, we're looking at something that will allow us to do some A/B testing. This is commonly known as link rotator or split link testing, etc. But the idea is that we have one link. It's going to send some percentage to a destination A, some percentage to a destination B. And then we can compare which one actually converted better. Was it destination A or destination B? And by taking that traffic and splitting it, it really helps kind of solve for external forces. Seasonality probably being the biggest one. If you do destination for a month and then destination B for another month afterwards, and you send 100% traffic one month and 100% traffic to the other destination the other month, there may be minor differences, right? Especially in the holidays, right? If you did October for one destination, November for another, we know that November and December tend to be the highest months due to the holiday shopping, Black Friday, etc. So by using that A/B split link testing, you can kind of solve for this. So you can really do these tests any time of the year, etc. Also setting up the a split link to have the multiple different destinations, it helps create more of a clean room for testing. There's less other variables that can impact your testing as well. Finally, it allows you to test outside of just a website where you're able to install your JavaScript, right? So being able to use a link management platform to A/B test links, allow you to test from social media, allow you to test from email, so forth and so on. So using that link management platform with the split destination functionality really opens up the different ways you can test. And as affiliate marketers, a lot of us are learning that while a website is great, you may actually see much higher conversions from your social media channels, etc. So before we dive too far into this, just a good important thing to note is that we're looking at this through the lens of affiliate marketing. And these exact same lessons and processes also work for testing other things such as just straight up sales or conversions, right? So if you're a brand selling something, you may want to check, some of your partners, some of your channel versus yourself, or some combination thereof. The same framework, these same lessons apply to that. But again, we're going to be talking a lot about affiliate marketing just because that's where our background is and what the presentation was really geared towards. But again, it's open-ended. Encourage you to explore and test. So traditionally, there are 7 steps that we use when we set up experiments and run these ourselves. And through the rest of this presentation, we're going to dive into each of these individually and just talk about kind of the different pieces that go into it, some pitfalls, etc. But just wanted to give you kind of a high up overview of what we're looking at before we dive too far into it. So we mentioned 3 kind of experiments right off the get-go. We'll be actually looking at 2 of those because we've ran those experiments ourselves. So we're going to use those examples as we dive in, just to give you some real-world examples as well. The reason we're not using Amazon versus Walmart is we feel pretty strongly that it's not an either-or conversation, which is why we have this multi-retailer piece. But we can talk more about that later. So with that, let's dive in. So the very first step is to define your question. This is really some brainstorming here, and it starts off with really understanding your subject matter. As an affiliate marketer, as you've progressed to those levels, you probably hopefully understand those affiliate programs you're using relatively well. So in the case of Nike, we understand that Nike is a global brand. Nike has an amazing brand recognition all around the world, and people all over the world are buying, to the point that Nike has nearly 80 different storefronts set up to sell their shoes. So there's lots of fragmentation kind of from the user experience side of things. Nike does a decent job of detecting if they have set a cookie or if you're coming from another country and trying to direct you to the product in your local store, but it's not foolproof. We've seen many times where it just doesn't work as one would expect. The other side of the equation, though, with Nike is that they use 2 different affiliate networks. They use CJ specifically for the US Nike affiliate program, and they use AWIN for all the other affiliate programs that they have around the rest of the world. So there's kind of a monetization challenge there as well. So between the user experience and the monetization, we have some opportunity here to do some exploration. So coming into this, the thesis that we had is, okay, will localizing a Nike affiliate link lead to more commissions and a higher conversion rate? That's a good question. That's a maybe it will, maybe it won't. And there's one way to figure that out. A good experiment will answer exactly that. On the flip side, one of the other ones we wanted to look at was around Amazon. Is a direct Amazon link going to be more valuable than a multi-retailer? And there's a lot of things that kind of point some different directions here. So doing our research, we know that in the US, Amazon is massive. They've got 39% US e-commerce market share according to eMarketer. However, we've seen that over the last 10 years and in the last few months in particular, Amazon just keeps cutting their commission rates, and the last one was pretty significant. We also know that using Amazon exclusively as your affiliate program is akin to putting all your eggs in a single basket. It can be incredibly helpful in the early days because you can move very quickly, but it's very risky in the longer run because an inadvertent change in commission rates or some misstep can actually get you removed from the affiliate program due to a compliance issue. So the question is Amazon alone the most profitable way to move forward and the less risky? Or is it actually maybe adopting a multi-retailer strategy like we're seeing with this choice page, where there are Amazon links and other retailers that sell the same product and also have affiliate programs to reward you for any sales of that single product? So for this one, the thesis can be, a choice page optimized for the US, because that's what the choice pages are optimized for in this example. Will that perform better than an Amazon.com link? So, 2 different sides. What's the better one? Again, this sets us up to really have a good, clean experiment so we can dive in. So in the very beginning, we have to do some research to make sure we really understand things, and hopefully this research isn't too crazy because you already understand that affiliate program as you've progressed. But it's also important to state a thesis to really know what specifically you're going to test. And then finally, there wasn't a slide on this in particular, but it's really important to take notes. Your lab journal is essential. So whether it be in emails that you send yourself or a Google Docs document, whatever it may be, really can't emphasize enough that as you do your research, you take notes. As you state your thesis, you take notes, etc. Because that that process of thinking through it is really essential later at the very end of the experiment to try to understand, could the experiment be better? Did I find the results? Did I truly answer the question I was looking for? So forth and so on. So please take notes. I can't emphasize that enough. So step 2 of the process is really kind of planning your approach. Again, use your notes here, but we want to first of all start to set up our test versus our control. This is one of the most fundamental building blocks of how to do an experiment. The idea is that the test is what's new. It's what we're trying to explore. Where the control is what's old, and that's our baseline. We need the two different things so we can compare them back and forth. So in those 2 experiments we talked about, for Nike, it was that direct Nike link that we were using before. That's the control. But then we were talking about localizing a Nike link so that clicks from different countries would get sent to the different stores using the appropriate affiliate program, etc. So test with Nike, localized Nike link. A control with Nike is just that direct Nike link. Taking that step further, that second experiment we're talking about is that multi-retailer one. So the control, the baseline, what's old is just that Amazon.com link. What's new is this whole concept of a choice page, a multi-retailer page that's easy and quick to build on the Genius Link platform. So the second thing that's important as we're planning out our approach is to really make sure that we're testing for specific. So again, Nike has 80 some odd different storefronts, or close to 80 different storefronts. When our test, it doesn't make sense for every single link that we want to build all 80 of those storefronts. In fact, we probably only want to test for the top 10 countries or so that are getting the most traffic. That should give us a good overview, a good percentage of the traffic. And from there, we can extrapolate the results. But there's always kind of that work, effort, return calculation. So in this case, let's pick the top 10. Maybe it's only the top 5 if the top 5 make up, say 90% of the traffic. Pick a number that makes sense so that you're getting a good test, but you don't have to test for everything in this initial test. It's more important to finish the test than to get bogged down in those details. But again, it's really important to be conscious of knowing what specifically you're testing for. From the multi-retailer one, where we're talking specifically about US-based clicks. So we're not setting up a choice page for clicks coming from the UK or clicks coming from the Japan. We only want US-based clicks. So again, in your notebook, just kind of jot some notes. When I test this, I want to test for this thing specifically. There's other things I need to filter out to make sure that my test is accurate as possible. And we'll get into the mechanics of how to filter that out in a later step. But again, it's when you're thinking about this, please be cognizant of that noise. We want to test for signal. We don't want to test for noise. On top of that, in these early phases, you really want to kind of figure out what number you're going to use to compare. I'm a huge fan of EPC, earnings per click, because it really helps normalize for clicks and also normalizes across affiliate programs and payouts. We'll talk a little bit more about this later as well. But whatever metric it is that you're looking at, it's really important that you just stick with it, define it early on, and run with it. Test size. This is another thing that's something to be super cognizant of. And that's really how granular do you want to be? Do you have the time and resources to go in and set up a bunch of individual links to test with? Or is it better to test a number of links together, test that group as a whole? More granular data is good, but you don't want to run into analysis paralysis. You don't want to spend all your time setting up your test that you're not running the rest of your business as well. So there's that compromise there. So maybe you start with a large group of links. If you get data that's good, or you want more investigation, you go to a smaller, fewer links. But whatever it may be, again, kind of think about this ahead of time. The other major consideration when you're deciding between links or groups or a whole property is how much traffic are you getting through. If you're only getting a handful of clicks per link, then you're going to need a lot of different links to be able to get enough click traffic to be able to make some real conclusions. If you have a ton of traffic just running through a couple links, then maybe you only need to set up your experiment with a couple links. So again, time, resources, click traffic, the constraints associated with it as well are all important to kind of figure out how big you want this test to be. Okay, so we talked about test control, the 2 fundamental pieces of it. We talked about how to test for specific to kind of weed out some of the noise. We talked about identifying the key performance indicator. We talked about how big our test should be. So once you have all these notes, you've thought through all these things and put notes in your notebook, it's time to move on to the next step. And I think this one's probably my favorite. This is where we actually go and set up the links. This is where the mechanics of it really start to dive in. So the first thing we need to talk about is tracking IDs versus sub IDs. So the gist is when you're setting up your experiment, you're probably already using Amazon's affiliate program or Nike's affiliate program. So if you don't think about how to track your experiment information, specifically your test and your control, outside of what's normally being clicked on and commissions being earned, it's going to be impossible to do this test. So you need to differentiate your test and your control from your normal click traffic. And the way that's often done is with sub IDs. So sub IDs are available on pretty much every single affiliate program except for Amazon. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But sub IDs are available across all these different affiliate programs. The idea is that you can add in a ancillary bit of information to a link, and then the affiliate network will report back on clicks and sales for that specific bit of information. You can take this to the extreme, or you can keep it relatively simple. The Affluent blog has a great article talking about how to use sub IDs, what the different sub IDs for all the different affiliate networks are, so forth and so on. So if you want to kind of brush up your skills around sub IDs, definitely encourage you to check out that blog. Shifting gears over to Amazon, Amazon doesn't allow sub IDs except for a select few that have the sub tag feature. For most people, we're limited with having just tracking IDs. And a tracking ID is that tag equals and it's that value afterwards. So by default, when you first set up your Amazon Associates account, you have a single tracking ID. But Amazon actually allows you to create up to 100 additional tracking IDs. And we're going to need to do exactly that. So sub IDs, we can arbitrarily assign them to the link. Tracking IDs actually have to be set up ahead of time. It's best to create a test and a control tracking ID. If you're testing a group, you only need one or two of those. If you're testing on a per link, then you're going to need a testing and a control per link that you're testing as well. So you may end up creating quite a few of these different tracking IDs. So once you have that information, it's time to move on to the next step. And that's to put together kind of a draft overview of what we're talking about as far as that link functionality. So in the Nike example, remember we were talking about 10 different countries. So we had kind of a control, and we had test, and that test was going to include the 10 different ones. So there's 11 different destinations. Just kind of getting those all down is really important. It saves you a lot of time. And you're a whole lot less error prone building out kind of a draft of what you want these links to look like inside of a spreadsheet, or even in your journal. So again, we did kind of two different experiments here. Nike, we did it all in a spreadsheet. It was a little bit easier to organize that way. However, with the multi-retailer, it was super easy to organize because it was a little bit simpler of an experiment. Just with an outline format inside of our journal. So whichever you prefer, just make sure that you go through the exercise to kind of set everything up as well. Just jumping back real quick, you'll notice, and it's a little bit hard to see here, but here's all of our different sub IDs that we used. And this one, it's a little bit hard to see, but here we can see the different tracking ID that's used because this is a lot of Amazon links, etc. So again, that first step of figuring out tracking IDs and sub IDs is super important for this next step, where we're actually setting up that draft of the different pieces of how that link is going to be formatted. So once we get that, it's time to actually dive into your link management platform. Again, I'm biased. Genius Link is the platform I've been working on for the past decade. There are other link management platforms out there, but of course, we're going to be using Genius Link in this example because that's what we're most familiar with. But the gist is you need to set up this split link. And we talked about the control, the old, and the test, which is the new. But on top of that, we're introducing a new term here, and that's the master link. The master link is where all this is really housed. So you have your master link that gets published, and that master link splits to give you split half your traffic to the control and half of it to the test, or whatever that split may be. It may not be 50-50. So the first step we need to do is we need to build that test link. Control links are typically the simple links. They're a single destination. You don't necessarily need a link management platform to build a special link for that. You certainly can. There's a lot of other functionality that obviously link management platforms can provide, especially Genius Link, where we're very focused on the affiliate world. But yeah, the control, we're not going to specifically talk about that because in the Nike case, it was just a direct link to Nike.com. It was the localization that we wanted to set up as our test. That localization, the 10 different countries. You can see here that we use a Genius Link advanced link. And we did a bunch of different rules. If Australia, you go here. If UK, you go here, so forth and so on. And then we just copied and pasted from that spreadsheet that we had that had each of the specific links plus the correct tracking ID, sub IDs, etc. The next step we do is the master link, right? So the master link, again, we're using an advanced link here. You notice that we have a kind of the default here, but then we have a specific rule that filters for the traffic that the 10 different countries that we wanted to test, we want to make sure that only that traffic comes into the test. We don't want traffic from Japan coming in here because we don't have a rule set up in the test link specifically for Japan. So we're only looking for these 10 countries. 50% of our traffic is going to go to one destination, 50% is going to go to the other. We have the rest of the traffic going to kind of a catch-all that's outside of that. So just to break that down a little bit more of a bird's eye view. Again, we have the specific countries, we have our control link. The control link, of course, has a sub ID. We had our test link. Inside the test link, there was also sub IDs. And then we're doing a 50-50% 50-50 traffic split to make sure that we're sending half the traffic in each direction for this specific test. So then putting all those pieces together, we obviously have our master link. 50% of the traffic is then going to go to our test link. The other 50% is just going directly to that Nike affiliate link that also includes our control information, etc. Okay, so that may have been a little bit complicated, but again, if you had done the draft beforehand, it shouldn't be as confusing as I may have just made it out to sound. You have the information, you set it up inside the links, you nest one link inside of the other, and you should be good to go. So to set up your link, figure out your tracking IDs, your sub IDs, make sure you're building those, figure out the draft, whether it's a spreadsheet or an outline, and then build the different links you need, nest them together, and you're good to go past step 3. And the next step is to publish and test. Testing is a super important part, and let's dive into that. So you've got the experiment set up, you've got the links. The next thing you need to think about is how you're going to place those links. Does it make sense to place them in something brand new? And if you're going to be testing, most of your affiliate marketing happens via email or Twitter or Facebook posts, things that have a relatively short half-life. It's important then you're probably building a new link. However, if you're testing on your website or a YouTube video description or something that has more evergreen, then you may actually just want to go in and update an existing link. And you can update that existing link to point directly to your new master link, or that existing link can become your new master link. It's fine to daisy chain links together, especially on the same domain. They'll resolve quickly even though they're on HTTPS because it's already got the handshake, etc. New links, when you're setting those up, again, email, etc., you don't exactly know how much traffic you're going to get there. It's a little bit unknown quality, but that you don't have much decision there. For, again, the YouTube videos, etc., you should have a pretty good idea of what those traffic level are, what the breakdown of international aspects may be, or international visitors may be, and other aspects of the link that are important there. The other thing that is important to think about too, if you're going to replace an existing link, is that your test starts essentially immediately. You've already worked hard to build up a traffic source to send to that link. So when you replace that link, when you update that link, it's going to start sending traffic through that link to your master. Let's then going to split it to your test and your control. So new link versus existing link. Again, think about it for a minute, write it down in your journal, get ready to actually implement it. The next step is you need to confirm that everything works. It's really important that you test your links in the super early phase, because if you mess up now, you're going to be so bummed after you have waited and are looking at the data to really kind of analyze the results. So please jump in and check those links. Click each link until you get the behavior that you expect. It may not be that your first link goes to your control and your second link goes to your test. You may need to click a few different times. You may need to jump through different VPNs or different proxies to make sure you're getting the different behaviors. But it's really important that you test, because the devil is in the details. And if you mess up at this phase, you may have bad data, which will lead to a bad decision. So please just take a little bit of extra time and test and retest again. It's important to note too that while you're testing, that just clicking on the link and seeing where it leads probably isn't helpful, right? So in our Nike example, I'm based in the US, right? And our control was to go to the Nike US store via that direct link. But in the test, we also were going to go to the Nike US store, but it was through that geo-targeted link. Well, those links resolve so quickly that I wouldn't know the difference between, again, in the US, I'm just going to end up at the US store, the US Nike store. I don't know if I went through the test path or the control path. So when you use a tool like Redirect Detective, you can actually see the different steps. So in this example, the end destination was the same, but we can see this extra step where the master resolved to the test and then went through. Where this one, the master went directly to our control, which was not a Genius link in particular, and resolved through. So without having a tool to kind of watch that resolution path, I wouldn't have been able to catch and make sure I was actually testing both variants of the master link. After you do your testing, you're happy with it, I encourage you to sit back and relax for a day, and then go in and check the affiliate networks or the dashboards that you use. You're probably not going to see sales coming through quite yet, because there's often some degree of lag between when a sale is made and when a sale is reported. But most affiliate networks, and Genius Link in particular, report near real time. So if you're seeing clicks show up where they should be reported, it's likely that the sales are not too far behind, even though they'll be reporting a little bit back. And when I say where they should show up, it's in particular across the tracking ID and across the sub IDs that you set up. You really want to make sure you're seeing clicks for each of those different variations. Again, you don't have to wait for a sale to fall through, because that can be a handful of different days. Okay, so we published the link. We either maybe did a new post or a new email, or we updated an existing link. We then were able to do some end-to-end testing to make sure that everything worked exactly as it could. Hopefully we were using tools there to make sure that both variations of the master link worked. And then we're going to double check our work and make sure that clicks and possibly even sales, again, depending on how fast they come through. Amazon's quick, others may not be as quick. But we want to make sure that the tracking ID or the sub IDs that we set up are actually seeing the data from our test flow through. And after we do that, it's time to wait. It's time to let that traffic percolate through. And how long is a great question. And unfortunately, it really depends. If there's a significant difference between the test and the control, you're going to find results a little bit quicker. Also, if you have significant traffic flowing through your links, or you have a big enough set of links, a large enough group to do your test, then the time for the test is also going to be a little bit shorter as well. Small differences take more activity or more time. Huge differences take less activity or less time. But ideally, we're looking for probably at least 1,000 clicks per destination, and you probably want to give it at least a month. Again, your mileage may vary. You may be getting just a significant amount of volume, or you may not be getting much volume at all, and therefore the results are going to change. But just kind of as a ballpark, we typically run our experiments for again about 1,000 clicks or at least a month before we start to look at the results. So again, it's time to wait. Allow some time for good enough numbers. And after you think you have good enough numbers, it's time to check. It's time to analyze. It's time to grab some data and have some fun. So the first step is to define the dates. Again, this is a great reason to go back to your notebook, to the notes that you've been leaving, and see when you first started setting up that date, or started setting up that experiment, and look at that date. You're probably going to want to start your data pool a day or so after your test links went live, so that you don't grab the data from when you were testing your links. You may have been clicking a ton of those links, looking at the different variations, etc., and that could just add a little bit of noise to your experiment. So if you started your experiment on the first, I would probably wait till the second or third to start that data pool, just to make sure you don't have your test links in there. And then when you finish that date, you don't want to grab the data all the way up to today, because it's likely that your sales haven't fully made their way through the process. So you're going to want to give yourself some adequate time for that information to come through. Amazon often reports very quickly. So Amazon reports next day. So if your experiment is just over Amazon stuff, then you only maybe have to look at from your start date to a day ago or 2 days ago, etc. That being said, a little nuance here is that Amazon in particular, if you're testing, say, a link to the product details page versus a link to the shopping cart, that link to the shopping cart, people have 89 days before they have to purchase before a sale will come through, because Amazon pays the commissions when the product has actually been shipped. So if you're doing an experiment like that, you actually may need to wait, multiple months because of that significant lag, and then, dial it back. So you may have to wait 4 months, so you get a month worth of data, because the last 3 months didn't really matter because of the lag. On the flip side, these tools like Sovereign Commerce or Skimlinks, it may take sometimes a few days, but sometimes a week or more for the sales data to percolate through. So if you want to give yourself a month, again, cut a day or two off the beginning to start it, but then maybe cut a week or so off of the end and look at that specific data. So it may take 6 weeks to get 4.5, 5 weeks of actual data. But start lag, finish lag. Make sure you define those dates and you're smart about that. So next you have to grab, if we're doing EPC in particular, you need to grab your clicks and you grab your commissions. It's important that you grab those from the relevant sources. We are probably all very familiar that the number of clicks that one tool reports is going to be different than another tool reports, which is going to be different than another tool. Everyone reports clicks slightly differently. They may have a different lag between how to determine a duplicate click, or a different list of what is considered a bot, or a different set of user agents, etc. So because of that, you're going to want to grab all your clicks from a normalized source, which again is why an intelligent link management platform makes a ton of sense. Those numbers may not agree with the affiliate network numbers, but at least they're consistent across each other. So your test and your control, you'll have those numbers. Grab the clicks from the link management platform, then grab your commissions from wherever they may be. If you're doing the multi-retailer test, you may have to grab commissions from multiple different dashboards. If you were just testing variations in Amazon or whatever it may be, then just the Amazon dashboard with the different track IDs, etc. Once you have that data, it's time to start to crunch some EPCs. So again, earnings per commission is your commissions divided by your clicks, your earnings, which is your commissions divided by your clicks. So get your clicks into one spot, get your commissions into one spot, and then it's a relatively easy division formula to figure out that EPC. So here's the example from Nike. Here's our example from the multi-retailer. These spreadsheets may look a little bit more complicated than they need to be. And I have a tendency to go overboard in my spreadsheets. I love a good spreadsheet, but it can really be just as simple as you want. Clicks, commissions, EPC calculation. So we got the data, we analyzed it, we defined the dates, we grabbed the data, and we start to look at the EPC. Awesome, we've got stage 6 done. The next step, we need to review the results. This is where the fun really begins, right? So as soon as you start to look at that EPC, you can start to get some data or some results, and you can really see if it was a successful experiment. Did you prove the hypothesis or not, right? With Nike, we saw a nearly 55% increase in EPC from the localized link. So yes, a localized link outperforms a direct Nike link. From the multi-retailer versus the direct link, we saw a massive improvement. We saw 115% improvement in the EPC, 18 cents per click versus just over 8 cents per click. And that again was from the analysis from the EPC, which include the clicks and commissions that we pulled in the prior step. The next step, for those that are not scared away by statistical significance, a little bit of math, encourage you to take that next step. So statistical significance just really measures the confidence that the difference in results is attributable to a difference in the variance, right? Is there a difference between a test and a control? It's important to notice that this is a difference in the variance, not necessarily the difference in variance. You can be trying to test something, but you could set up your experiment in a way that tests something else. The whole causation does not imply correlation. Sorry, correlation does not imply causation comes into effect here. So, long story short, it's best to, of course, make sure you set up a good test, which is why your notebook is there, but also to take it to the next step and just see if your gut was right looking at those EPCs. Was there a real difference? So in these experiments, we took the clicks as an exchange for what the visitors were, and we took the commissions as an exchange for what the conversions were and dropped that in. So for the Nike test, there was 100% certainty that our tests were statistically significant. For the multi-retailer one, again, we have our clicks on one side, we have our commissions on the other side, total commissions. And again, we saw 100% certain that the tests were right. So these experiments led to statistical significance that testing the two was actually in favor with beyond a doubt. So what if your control wins, or maybe there's not enough data to make a real conclusion? It's really important to not think of this as a failure. It's really important to think of it as a learning opportunity. Thomas Edison with working on the light bulb, I forgot what the exact quote is, but he learned 100 times or 1,000 times the way not to build a light bulb. Those are things you can check off. You've tested it. You have your notes. You can move on. Again, why that testing notebook is so important is you can also go back and look for where you may have made an error, made a mistake. Maybe you flip-flop something. Maybe you weren't really testing. Maybe you had too much noise. Whatever it may be. looking at this information is a great time to go back and review that, look at that learning opportunity, and write down what you learned. Again, it's all about kind of preserving that thought process so that you have a resource to go back to and look at again. If you want to run the same experiment in 6 months, you can see exactly how you did it, what you were thinking about, etc. So just because the control won or it was inconclusive results doesn't necessarily mean that the experiment was a waste. Not by any means. Knowing what doesn't work really is just as important as knowing what does. On top of that, it's also probably worth considering, would it make sense to just run the experiment a little bit longer? It's all set up. Is there any reason to cut off the experiment? Would you have more trust in your results if you ran it longer? Would your statistical significance be stronger? Were you kind of right on the cusp of having enough information to dive in? From the flip side as well, you can continue to run the experiment and not have to do a 50-50 split. If you see that your test variable is actually seems to be yielding a higher earnings, but you're not completely convinced, well, maybe you want to take advantage of those extra earnings. So maybe you bump it up to be a 70-30 split or an 80-20 split. You're still sending traffic through, but the bulk of your traffic is now going through your test and hopefully yielding you even more money. Of course, this is why EPC makes so much sense, is because another month goes by, you can go back and look at that. And again, you're going to be taking the total commissions for your control and dividing by the total clicks of your control, which is maybe only 20 or 30% now. And then doing the same on the other side and comparing those EPC. But there's often, unless you're very happy with the results, not a good reason to cut that experiment short. You can keep running it, keep looking at that, but still kind of take advantage of the additional revenue that it's yielding for you. So was it a success? What did the EPC numbers say? Was that success statistically significant? If it wasn't a success, still it's a success as far as experimentation goes, because you learned something at that point. And in fact, you should probably consider allowing more time for both tests, or maybe even sign up a sister test that also helps run with it as well. Congratulations, you got through the 7 steps, but what next? Well, you run an experiment, of course. Hopefully you learned something here and you're set up to deep dive and start your first experiment. Of course, always encourage you to reach out if you have any questions, especially with the GeniusLink platform, but experiments in general. Happy to help. And on top of that, I wanted to make an offer to you all. I and GeniusLink would be happy to help you with your experiments. We're happy to exchange you the use of your tools in exchange for your learnings. We think a rising tide lifts all ships, and we would be really curious to hear what results came out of your experiment. So if you're willing to share those results with us and the world, other affiliate marketers out there, we're happy to get you set up with the tools, no cost to you, so you can run these experiments and that we can all learn together and help the industry move forward. So if that's interesting to you, please let us know. Contact us through the GeniusLink site, either at the contact us at the very bottom of the site or through the intercom bubble on the I think it's bottom right. Just message us and let us know that you're interested. You saw my presentation and you're really interested in running through it. So for those of you that aren't familiar, GeniusLink is a link management platform. We work with thousands of creators and affiliates, and we help them build better, smarter links so that they can increase their commissions, they can boost their sales and engagement. That's really the name of the game with the platform. We work with a bunch of different brands from around the world. We've been very fortunate that we have some pretty cool clients. On top of that, we work with a ton of different creators as well. We've got 3 different platforms in which we work with different creators. Creators, of course, include those people you see on YouTube, but also musicians, authors, podcasters, etc. We're really fortunate to have a really great base of really smart people doing really cool things, and we can help them monetize that. So again, wanted to thank you for your time. Best of luck in your experiments. I look forward to hearing how it goes. And thank you for your time. Cheers.